when Kyle and David are going to start today, because David has some key information about White Dog that he wants to share with us before we get started with Creation Story. So David and Kyle are starting. When they're completed their portion, I'm going to start the Creation Story. I'm gonna be telling it. Last week we went over who John Arthur Gibson was and how he was relevant to the story. Does anybody want to share that? No, okay. Oh, so yeah, John Arthur Gibson. I could send you. I'll send you the slides, and then so then when I start the Creation Story, I'm not putting anything up on screen. What we talked about was about the old ways of transference of knowledge. In the original ways, not old, the original ways, they would sit in council or sit in longhouse, sit in gatherings, and the elders would tell the story, and then the learners would tell the story back to them, and then it was this exchange of that way of transferring the knowledge. And so what we want to do here today, or what our intention is, that we wanted you not only to know the cultural aspects of the language, of the story, and how it is directly tied to your identity as an Uwehue, but we wanted to get everyone to be really familiar with the key characters in the story. Because the key characters, knowing who they are and what parts they play in the overall story, really helps you to connect the dots. And so what I asked is that as I start telling the story, I'm going to read it in Uwehue. You're going to hear it, you're going to feel it, you're going to vibe the story, say it even in Jarhonsa. Brian, Kyle, who's Brian? Kyle and David are going to jump in and share constellations that might be tied into the story as we go. So as we start to get into the story and you start to learn who the key characters are, or even just the key things that are coming to you as you're envisioning it through the telling, I'm asking that you draw it. So for example, we're going to introduce Iga Rungwe Rade Zerujes in Onondaga. There's this main man, his name is Rade Zerujes. And then I want you to draw Rade Zerujes and just draw whatever's coming to you. Because like if we think about wampum belts, or we think about condolence cane, we think about our tattoos, they're all mnemonic devices to get us to recall information. So the intent of this activity is for you to hear the story, to feel it, to draw it in ways that will make you remember it, and for you to really start to get to know the characters. So you'll draw Rade Zerujes. So Rade Zerujes means he throws lightning. So maybe if you can't draw, you draw a stick character with a lightning bolt. So then when you go home, at the end of that day, you could look back at that, your drawing, and you could retell it to your family. Because John Mohawk, before he passed away, came to town and he said, this story was taken from us. And then it's so important for us to tell it and retell it and retell it in whatever way we know, in order to continue to transfer that knowledge in the original ways of our people. And so that's what these are all about. So you'll get to draw the characters and what they mean to you, maybe key words.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah. So that and then that becomes your creation story. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
I can go now.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if we had more.
No.
So if you recall, I just want to pick up a bit from where we left off last week, where some of the potential impact sites are, for those of you that are watching the that Graham Hancock with his Ancient Apocalypse. So what the theories, the scientists are coming out with was multiple comet impacts into the ice sheet that was over pretty much covered all of Canada, went into the upper United States. So the one that created the Scablands, Randall thinks that was up here on the Prince George region. There's potentially impact there. Another potential impact site is here in Lake Nipigon. So there's an impact there. So that way. And as well, potentially there's one at the bottom of Lake Ontario. And you know, as I showed last week, the Finger Lakes region. So this is where the bottom of the ice floe was, right at where the mouth of the lakes begin. So that's why they mark it, and you're basically the Finger Lakes are basically coulees, so they were carved out by the floodwater. And if you recall, I went over the drumlin fields. Where's it? So we have to Finger Lake. So they have the Finger Lakes down here. And some of the markers of floods are these drumlin fields that are located here. So the water was flowing this way under a high pressure from the flowing underneath the ice sheet. So as the waters were it was flooding, there's also some located in the northern part of Lake Ontario around here, and okay, and possibly another one was here at Lac Saint Jean. Was another potential impact site. And so one of the scientific evidence that there is, besides the obvious shapes and the geography, the topography of that area, was that every year was about 10 or 15 years ago in Pennsylvania, they found evidence of rocks that they dated to 12,900 years ago that came, like each geologist had, like each area has called a different province of rocks. So they can tell which area the rocks come from. And they found that this rock came from the Quebecia region. Now the Quebecia region, about 1/3 of that is taken up by Lac Saint Jean. And as I said, they dated 12,900 years ago. And as you can see, we figure was all of this was the width of the flood waters coming down. So as I mentioned last week, during the time of as this was flooding, just these mountains and Mount Royal was the tops of them was the only thing above the floodwaters. Everything else was under floodwater. And as well as started flowing south, possibly this way, whether it was an impact here that created the Finger Lakes, or was it the floodwaters coming down from this way? And then we could see Lake Champlain was also carved out by the mega floods, and some of the waters kept flowing down. As you can see, floodwaters coming down that way and that way. This was not created by that flood, but it did help flow the water because of the way it was taken naturally. And the floods on that way and down this region. And then we can see here Mississippi, Mississippi River. So that's about how wide the floods were coming down. So where that impact site is, we're not sure. But that's pretty much what we're looking at. In one area, what we have are the Carolina Bays. So this is. This is just outside of Myrtle Beach. So you can see all of these impacts there. So they're basically, they find them all the way from Florida all the way up to New Jersey. And I forget the guy's name. One of the scientists, the guy that originally came up with it, and then Antonio Zamora, the one who's been studying it more. Basically what Dave concluded, because there's also some in Nebraska, and by doing, figuring out they're all pointing in the same direction, where do they meet up, where do they cross over? And you find it crosses over here in Saginaw Bay. So I think that this was a potential impact site that hit on top of the ice. Basically, all those blocks of ice went flying up into the atmosphere. They think, based on the calculations, they went up as high as 350 kilometers into space. And then after about 15 minutes, rained back down all along the North America there in that region. And where did that go? Right there. And as you can see, if you look through a LiDAR, basically the entire landscape. So it just continuously raining down. So basically nothing survived this that was in this area. The impacts, the average size was the size of the Olympic Stadium. Basically a baseball stadium, that's the average size they figured of these the ice, whatever you want to call them, but all that was raining down and just hitting all this region there. And basically is hitting so often, so rapidly that it's basically would liquefy the earth. We see that sometimes in earthquakes, where the ground shakes so much it actually liquefies, and like cars and buildings sink into it. So that's what we're saying. Nothing in this region would survive this, these impacts here. And so, and one of the other odd things, like you said, that they discovered about them is that there's only one plant found naturally. The only place in the world where it's found naturally is in these bays. So, anybody guess what it is? Venus flytrap.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
Yeah, so, which kind of looks like an alien to me. Considering it potentially it was something from outer space getting into the ice and then maybe infecting that, and then I don't know, but that's the only place where Venus flytraps are found naturally. So, is there? Yeah, so one of the other things that are the evidence of the floods are underfit rivers, which most of the rivers in North America are. And so basically, I think this Minnesota River. See that one. So this is the channel. So this is where the flood water went through, and now today's river, the Minnesota River, is just a tiny little thing. But these embankments are even on either side. So you find all these underfit rivers across North America where during the floods, this was how wet the flood was. And then once the flood water subsided, basically all that luck of the modern smaller ones that find their way through out there.
What's the word you said?
Underfit river.
Underfit.
Yeah. You watch Ancient Apocalypse, episode 8, Randall goes into it. Or no, it wasn't on there.
See, it was.
No, it's on. It was mentioned it last week, on Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock and Randall crossing around that, and on there, that's where Randall showed Joe Rogan about this underfit river. Yes. Okay. What was this? Talking about, so you can hear the Mississippi. Roughly around this line, that area. And of course, as I showed on Google Maps, the St. Lawrence. You catch up. That's basically all like floodwater was in the St. Lawrence today. It's just a small remnant, basically, of the initial floodwaters coming down, possibly from Lexington impact. Any questions?
The first one you showed, it said Henderson, that's like in Nevada area.
Well, they're Nevada.
Just trying to figure out where that was, the first one you showed.
It was
Oh, the-
British Columbia.
Oh, the first potential impact, you mean?
No, where the ice was running, the. actual-
Oh, that's Minnesota.
Oh, so.
They're right outside Minneapolis. So. That's that one. That's actually the one that triggered Randall Carlson when he's looking at that. When he was on acid. That something's going on here, and that's from there kind of so further from there. So. So David has joined us now.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, everybody. Hi,
Hey.
Trina. Hi. How's everyone doing? I'm excited. We're getting to the creation story today, right?
Yeah. Well, possibly. Yeah, really. You know, as I mentioned, but we planned on, what we thought would take us one session. So who knows if we're actually going to get to it, but we should at least get to the characters.
Well, I'm excited to hear what he's.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I've been waiting.
Yeah. So you want to do that? I'll give you the host so you can get slides or the.
Great. Well, I'll try and go not fast, but at a good pace. At a good pace that will be like not running, but walking swiftly, so that I give lots of time for Trina to get us into the creation story. But I think, you know, I never heard of the white dog ceremony before session number 1 when Trina brought it up, or maybe it was session 2 that we had where you brought it up. And then thank you for sending me the materials. And then was it Joyce sent some more materials too, which I found some interesting things in there too. Just that I'll mention, it was after I had already prepared all my slides, but there was some more detail in this most recent of the 3 different sources that are talking, or the articles that are describing the ceremony. But I think it'll also be a good lead in to the creation story that we're about to examine, because the system, or I call it the system, the patterns that these ancient stories are using appear to encode the message. It's like a language, you know. The part of this seminar, we're exploring the importance of language, and it was really beautiful last week what Trina was talking about, of the language itself encodes meaning. Of course, that's how we convey meaning to one another, is through language. But not just that, there are traditions around the world that, you know, I've heard of, like Sanskrit, which is what they spoke in ancient India, and what these mantras that different mantras that you would learn to recite, the vowels and the consonants themselves are like in a rhythm. The mantras are put together in a way where the rhythm helps not just conveying meaning, but also to convey a rhythm. And the stars and the planets and the turning of the earth and our dance with the sun is cycles and it's rhythms. And so all these things are connected. If all the ancient sacred stories use the language of the stars as the part of their language to convey the meaning, and if the stars and their turning and the turning of the planets and the moon and the sun are part of this language, then it's like rhythm is important, and chanting or singing in the language in verse actually is important. And as we look around the world, all the sacred traditions that I know of from ancient times are preserved in verse. If they're passed down orally, they're passed down often in songs or in poems or in verse. What is verse? Verse, you know, we're talking all the time, but we're not always talking in verse. Verse is like language plus rhythm, plus measure, plus meter. And, you know, dance, we're moving all the time, but we're not always dancing. Dancing is like moving plus rhythm, plus meter, plus time. And the heavens mark out time. And they help us to know, okay, this is where we are in the cycle on any given part of the year. And so when you think about the fact that all the ancient myths are in poems or in verse, the Greeks, their creation story, there's an ancient poet named Hesiod who wrote down a creation story called the Theogony, the birth of the gods, and it's in verse. And they have a certain meter. You know, the Greeks would talk in their verse would be hexameter, that would be 6 beats, or pentameter, that would be 5 beats. And the verse would have certain beats. The Tao Te Ching of ancient China is in verses. The Bible, of course, you know, we talk about, well, what verse are you talking about? A lot of it is poetry, not all of it, but the ancient myths around the world, India, the Vedas, the different Upanishads are in verse. So there's something important there. There's something about rhythm that's important to us. And we ourselves, of course, have rhythms. We have cycles. Our heart is cycling and it's changing its rhythm. It's changing its speed. Scientists are now talking about, you know, the heart speeds up and it slows down, and it actually interacts with the brain, and it sends messages to the brain, not just the other way around. You know, we used to be told, oh, the brain tells the heart, you know, what to do, maybe unconscious, but your brain is telling the heart. But the heart is also talking back to the brain, and the two of them are almost like, you know, like our earth and our moon, or our earth and our sun. They're interacting, they're dancing together, but they're doing it with frequencies and rhythms. And when we meditate, scientists can actually tell, oh, that person has gone into alpha, which is like a certain frequency of thinking. Or when we sleep, oh, you're in deep, you know, beta sleep, switching into theta sleep, or whatever. They have different frequencies, which is rhythm. So I think this is all so important. What you were talking about last week, it's so beautiful that your language, you were saying it's not just conveying meaning through the words, but also through the sounds. Just like, you know, I've heard about Sanskrit. It's not just the mantras. You don't even have to understand Sanskrit. If you chant the mantras in that language, the way those mantras are put together has an effect on you and your thinking and your brain waves, and it helps to accomplish, you know, something. So that's all I'll say about that. As an intro to the white dog ceremony, comes at a certain time of the year. So it's part of cycles, the cycles of the year. And so those cycles, this ancient system is using those cycles, I'm convinced. So I thought, as I try and just answer a little bit about the white dog ceremony, I would share some slides of what I have seen about the cycles, how the ancient myths use these cycles, and then show a little bit specific to what the white dog ceremony may be about, but also try and lead in, and then I'll stop talking so that Trina can lead us in. Yes, go ahead.
I thank you so much for what you just described to us, and I just wanted to let you know that when the white dog tobacco burning and speech is being done in this modern time, it's also in a chant and it's in a rhythm. It's not just words. It's exactly what you just described. So even today in 2022 into 23, in this midwinter coming, when we burn that basket for the white dog ceremony, it's going to be in verse and in chant, in a poem song type of way. So thank you. You just connected a dot for me.
Yeah, well, thank you. And you know, I've studied writings from the 1800s of different accounts of people who went to live with the Cheyenne or went to live with the Comanche, and you know, these are like people from the Department of the Interior or whatever, or just people that were trying to write down and describe, and they would say things like, well, the Comanche warrior is very attached to his song. He has this song that's written for him specially, and he starts off his day, the first thing he does is sing it. And then later, before he goes to sleep, he sings it again. And like, I feel like it's likely that all people knew the power of song because of this. Around the world, the myths are all in verse. But today, it's almost like there's an effort to get us to, oh, well, you know, we've got professionals who sing for us instead. Or, you know, if I start singing, someone might say, what is it you do for a living? And I say such and such, and they'll say, well, let's keep it that way. You know, stop singing. That's, you know, only Taylor Swift gets to sing, not you. Like, what is that? So it's really like we probably should be singing every day. And certainly even Christianity has singing, or they used to have like Gregorian chants. It's like the ancient people understood chanting and singing and its power. So yeah, so let me talk about the cycles. That's as kind of an intro to this thing about cycles. And maybe again, feel free to jump in. I love that you just said that, Trina, and but maybe if you could just mute it, just so that like it doesn't pick up a noise of a chair or something, but unmute it if somebody wants to jump in and interrupt me, please. Feel free to ask or stop me and say, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share my screen. So here is one of the articles that Trina sent, Sacrifice of a White Dog by the Onondaga Indians. This was the title of an article in the Syracuse Journal from, it looks like 1872 or 1873, 18 January, 1872. So here we are, 2022 going into 2023. And all these sources, I read them, they're amazing pieces of information in there. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to try and move a little bit fast. But notice it's connected to the cycles of the moon, but also the cycles of the year during the old moon nearest to the month of February. So this is near the lowest point of the sun as well. So it's like the sun gets to its oldest point before it's renewed. We'll talk about that in just a second. Around the winter solstice, or here in the Northern Hemisphere, winter is December. So it's the December solstice. So that's the old sun and then the renewal of the sun. And then here we have also, so after that, we get a moon, and it's the old moon nearest to the month of February. So this is a time of renewal. It has to do with cycles. And by the way, all ancient cultures, it seems like, had calendars based on the moon or the moon plus the sun. This idea of jettisoning the moon and just going with the sun, that is also comes around about the same time as Christianity, literalist Christianity. and Roman Empire. The Romans had a calendar, and we had Caesar was famously assassinated on the Ides of March. That's the 15th. Well, every month was actually tied to the moon. That's why the word month. And the 15th would be, halfway after the new moon, 14 days after the new moon, you get a full moon. So anyway, they had words in their vocabulary that we still have, remnants of in English, showing that we used to have moon calendars also, but then they got stamped out by this solar cult of Christianity. But if you go to China, they still have a lunar-based New Year. It's tied to both the sun and the moon. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside, but it's important. Like, we used to have these cycles more in our life. And I believe making a calendar that has no more connection to the moon is like a way of taking us away from connection to those cycles. So I don't think it's a good thing, because all ancient cultures used to have moon cycles too. Okay, strangled to death in order to prevent, so the dog supposed to have the sins of the whole nation, it says here in this account from 1872, perfectly white, and was strangled to death in order to prevent the effusion of blood, which would render the sacrifice not acceptable to Haudenosaunee. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. And like I said, please feel free to interrupt anytime, but somehow this ceremony is connected to, it says, the creator of the world, the holder of the heavens, the maker of men and animals, and the controller of destiny. So the ceremony itself is also connected to Haudenosaunee. And so I'm not gonna, say this is for sure what the constellations that might be associated with this are, but I'll give you some of my thoughts on it. But let me talk about the cycles of the year, because this is something I talk about a lot and at great length in my celestial mechanics course. But what I have seen as I go through the myths of the world is, why would they all be connected to the stars? Because they're using a language. The stars themselves show us things about where we are in the cycles, and those cycles have meaning. Like the coldest, darkest day of the year in the sun cycle has a meaning, and that's, we see that in the timing of the white dog ceremony. It's around the first moon after the bottom of the solar cycle. So this is a zodiac diagram, and it's from the 1600. The next slide too is simply the background stars that the sun moves through. As it moves throughout the year, you can recognize, oh, well, the sun right now is in the background of stars of this background. That gives me an idea of where I am in the year. So it's like 12, mile markers on the road or something. It's like 12 stations that help us know where we are in the year. But also ancient cultures would set themselves up, like they would set up their land in like in a square, 4 sides with 3 sections each, just like we could divide the year up into the 12 zodiac signs. But they would also always have a 13th in the middle, or often there would be, if there was 4 sides, there'd be a 5th in the middle, just like the 5 nations of the Iroquois before it became 6. Or there's other cultures where there's a whole book about this, very fascinating book about how around the world we see societies setting themselves up with 4 sides of the square and a 5th in the middle, like Wales in the country of Wales on the British Isles. They would have a special mountain in the middle that was the 5th, and the name of the mountain had to do with the number 5. And then there was 4 quadrants of the land of Wales. And Ireland, same thing. And then they would break the 4 quadrants down into 3 each, so it was like 12, 3 on each side, plus a 13th in the middle. It's connected. We're connecting what we do on the land in our society to what's going on in the heavenly cycles. So let me just introduce you to what's going on in this diagram. As we go throughout, as the sun moves throughout the year, in the way this diagram is it's just a map on paper of what happens in the sky. I know some people might look at this and say, oh, look at all that occult, evil astrology stuff on there. Yes, there is all kinds of things that had to go underground because of what Christianity, throughout the centuries. But what this really is just a map on paper of something that's happening as the sun moves throughout the year. So the way this map is laid out, the sun goes around in the direction of that arrow I just drew. You could, of course, draw it the other way, and there's, zodiac wheels where the sun goes the other way. It doesn't matter. This is just a piece of paper trying to create like a little model of what happens in the sky. But the way it's laid out here, there's an upper half and a lower half, and I've drawn a line. I drew that orange line across the middle. What I'm showing is that half of the year, days are longer than nights. The hour of daylight is longer. Half of the year, the hours of daylight is shorter. And there's a crossing point where we cross over from days being longer to days being shorter. So on this map of the heavens, this is the way it's laid out. And you can track where you are as days start to get shorter and shorter. Now, obviously, we're in the shorter time of the year. We're in the winter, and you're farther north than I am, so you know it even more. But the day, I used to be able to be out surfing at 8:30 at night, and it's still light out. Now it's like 4:30, it's dark, because the days have gotten so short. So that crossing point, there's the upper half and the lower half. So now I'm going to ask a trick question. I'm warning you in advance, trick question. In the ancient system, which do you think might represent like life and, which side might represent death? The side where it's all sunny and warm, or the side where it's all cold and dark and the days are short? Obviously, you would probably guess if I told you it's a trick question, but what do you think?
Okay, the day longer.
Longer would be life, right? Warm, sunny, and then when we, die, we go to the cold world of the dead and it's all dark and cold. But there's this thinker from he was born in 1875, he died in 1963, named Alvin Boyd Kuhn. I promised I'd try and keep this short. I got to keep my tangents down, but, going off on a tangent. But he said, you know what? I think we've got this all wrong. The ancients in their systems saw this life as a kind of world of sometimes confusion and darkness. And so actually, when you come down into the body, the divine spark coming down into the body is for the divine spark that is your infinite self, your authentic self, your heart self, your deep self. When it comes down and is born into a body, from its perspective, that's like going down into the lower half of the year. You see, the lower half is like water and earth. The upper half is like fire and air. The upper elements are fire and air. Well, that's the land of spirit. The spirit realm, they don't have bodies. They are in the realm of air and fire and spirit. Even the word spirit means breath. But when you come into a body, what are bodies made out of? Clay, the lower elements, earth and water. And we have, diseases here, and we have error, and we make a mess of things all the time. And we wish we hadn't done this, and we realize, oh, I was ignorant and when I did that. And so when we're down here, we're in the land of confusion and more darkness. And so they represented the descent into the lower half as the descent into this life. We're down here in this darker half, struggling around and trying to figure things out. And we don't even at first realize we have this divine higher self. We get separated from it. We forget this truth. And so we have to learn it and get back in contact with spirit and to really live up to our full potential. So they're trying to explain something to us with this language of metaphor, of picture. So there, so let me just finish off showing obviously if days get longer and longer, there's going to be a longest day at some point. That's at the very top. That's the summer solstice. Obviously there's going to be a shortest day. So we can draw a line there too, to divide the year into 4. And so we're going to have a crossing point where we go from longer to shorter. These are the equinoxes, and everyone should be pretty familiar with that. I could talk and talk and talk to really make it clear, but that's the framework. The myths are using the stars, not just for fun, but because they're conveying something within this language. And in the language, the lower half has to do with our mixed up condition down here on Earth. And so they want to help us. The myths are going to help us to discover who we really are. And so this point here, that's the dividing point where as we're coming down from the upper level to the lower, colder part, that represents going from spirit world into material world. And that is a birth. And that's actually our first birth, like when we are physically born. That's our physical birth. And notice where it is on this zodiac wheel. And I understand that precession changes this over the eons. We won't get into all that right now, but the system uses, if Alvin Boyd Kuhn is right, and I'm convinced he is, that the lower half means our physical life, then the drop down into the lower half is when we come into physical life at the first birth. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's clear. So then that's when we cross down into a body, and notice it's connected to Virgo. Virgo is like the first mother in many myths. Your first birth will have something to do with Virgo, and you come down into the lower half, and then you don't go up from there. You go down from there. We're not even at the shortest day of the year. That's at the equinox, when we just cross over from days being longer to days being shorter. Now days keep getting shorter, and they keep getting shorter for 3 more months until we get to that very shortest day at the solstice, the December solstice. And at that point, there is something really amazing that happens. Days stop getting shorter. Now they're still shorter than nights. We're still in the middle of winter, but it turns around and the sun will now start to move back. It's going to start rising farther and farther north again. And we're going to start getting warmer here in the northern hemisphere. And so it's going to turn around at the solstice. That's the shortest day. And that, in the ancient system, is the second birth. It's like, that's when the spiritual birth happens, because now we're going to start going back towards spirit. So there's a second birth in many, many traditions, or there's twins, as we're going to see in our examination of the creation story. Twins, often the first twin is representative of like the lower self, and the second twin is the higher self, or it's trying to show us, hey, you have a higher self, wake up and realize often that higher self is buried or is suppressed, or you've become separated from it. And so the ancient system, I believe, is in order to point us to this truth that we have an authentic self, a deep self that we have access to, and that self connects us to spirit. And so you don't see this framework clearly in every single myth, but you do see it in myths, sometimes little pieces of it, sometimes more clearly than others. Trina last time was talking about, there was this myth that David referred to that he likes to read a lot, and he gets something new out of it every time. That's the Odyssey, where this hero Odysseus is trying to get back home, and he goes through all these twists and turns. His path, I've argued, follows this. He goes down, 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 and that the Odyssey really shows kind of this whole system. And there's a few where you see it often in a longer myth more clearly than others. But anyway, let me just try and sketch out the system, get to the white dog ceremony, and then we'll go into what Trina has for us. So the second birth. So then you would think, well, great. From there, it's all uphill. You start going, that's where you rediscover that you actually do have a higher self. Then things must be smooth sailing after that, right? Well, the myths, no, the myths show that after that, you often just get buffeted around. And what happens in the Odyssey is Odysseus, when he gets to the lowest point, you would think, oh, he's going to get out if he keeps going towards, he gets to the other side of the wheel, and he always gets bounced back every time. He never makes it out that way. He keeps getting up to basically things that are associated with Pisces at the edge of the March equinox, and then he gets smashed back down, and it's like he's stuck in a washing machine just going around in the spin cycle. He can't get out, but he actually finally gets home by going a different way up the path between the shortest day and the longest day. That's the path of spirit. That's the path of reconnecting with self and the path of reconnecting with the divine, the great spirit, and actually, so I'm looking at the zodiac wheel here, but there's another path that cuts across the zodiac wheel, and that's the Milky Way. So this is the shortcut, or it's not really a shortcut, but it's like to really get out of this cycle, you follow the path of higher self. And so let me show it in the sky. This is a image from this free planetarium that I talked about, Stellarium. And this is part of the sky that we've looked at a lot in some of my presentations already, where the zodiac line is being crossed by the brightest part of the Milky Way. So the zodiac, there's the Milky Way, and there's the zodiac line. I'm just going to kind of go quickly for now. I've got, like I said, I spend a lot of time on this in some of the online courses that I've created and things like that. But so along here, that yellow line, that arc, that's the path of the sun. So remember, Virgo was kind of at the plunging down point. There's Virgo on the line. And there's Libra right after Virgo. So this is the direction that the sun and the moon and the planets go through on their paths. Okay, so I do draw them all in. Here comes Scorpio. So after Libra, the sun and the moon and the stars will go through as they go along this path. This is the path that's created by our dance with the sun, the earth and the sun interacting in the background of stars. Here's Sagittarius, we looked at briefly. Here's Capricorn. Yeah, I forgot that I did put them all in for you. And then here's Aquarius. And then at the very edge, we've got one little piece of Pisces there. And on the very far right is Leo. But these are the ones that are down on that lower part of the arc that I showed on the map of the zodiac ring. So if we're born in the first birth into the body at Virgo, and we make our way down, 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 the turning point's going to be down there in the darkest, coldest part of the year. It's really in between Sagittarius and Capricorn on that particular zodiac era. Like I said, precession over the eons does change it, but the path of spirit is more along a different route. Once you recover the realization that you have this connection to spirit, then you can start to it's not easy. I showed you that spin cycle. It's like you make progress, you go back, but there's another constellation whose foot basically goes through, the sun goes through that line, but it's not considered part of the zodiac. Can you see in between Sagittarius and Scorpio on that line that there's another constellation where the arc of the sun's path, and the moon will go through it, and the planets, does go through another constellation that's not really counted as a zodiac sign? Kyle knows what it is. It's the one I'm talking about a lot.
Yeah, Trina knows it.
It's Ophiuchus. We saw a little bit, and when I was talking about, before in some of the other stories, like Morro Rock from the Salinan Indians in the area where I live, that rock, or, the mountain, Ixui, that was throwing people over its head. Ophiuchus will sometimes play a lodge, in the underworld, or a tent or something, or a pavilion. It'll play all different kinds of things. But notice its very significant position. It is in the zodiac, but not in the zodiac. It's above the zodiac in a certain way, but still dipping its foot into the zodiac. But also it's along that beautiful Milky Way that is a different path than the zodiac path, a spirit path that goes to the higher, connects us. So Ophiuchus, in my analysis, this is something that I argue, I've never heard anyone else argue this, is a picture often of our higher self, our authentic self, because we have all these different gifts, all these different personality, even different personalities, like multiple personalities, but we also have deep within us this heart of compassion that we can access, that can connect us to spirit. So it is part of all the other parts of who we are, but it's different, it's higher, it's down here with us, but connecting to higher and to spirit. And right above Ophiuchus is this figure of Hercules, which plays Zeus. We saw some evidence that that is Zeus, that plays these different most powerful gods. I have shown evidence in my Celestial Bible Tour class that all these stories in the Bible, when they're talking about God, the Father God, it's connected with Hercules. Ophiuchus is our connection to the realm of the highest divine realm. It's a constellation that's in both. It's connected to the divine realm, and it's down here connected to the zodiac realm, and it's right along that Milky Way that goes right past. So remember, in the white dog ceremony, there's a reference in that one article about, well, you don't want to displease the great creator, the one who's in the heavens. That may be Hercules. So we talked a little bit about, I argued that Scorpio is sometimes a dog crouching at the gates of the underworld, like the gates of Ophiuchus in Greek myths. There's Cerberus with the 3 heads, and I showed that pot from ancient Greece where the Cerberus with his 3 heads had little serpents rearing up, little cobras, just like Scorpio, all over his feet and heads. But there is another dog right next to Scorpio. So there's 2, and I'm going to draw it right now. Oh yeah, and remember also that Hercules can sometimes be a wind, or can also be a tree, because I put that in because in the creation story, we're going to see, this part about being hung up in a tree or put up in a tree. But now look down below Scorpio. I'm going to draw in one more dog-like figure. If you look at Scorpio and Libra, right between them and below, there's this figure right here. The name of the constellation that we have from the ancient Romans and ancient Greeks is Lupus, which means a wolf. But it could be, coyote in some Native American legends. It could be a dog. So we have 2 dog figures there, Scorpio and Lupus, right underneath Ophiuchus. That could be part of this ceremony, and it's right at that most important time of the year, the crossing, not the crossing point, but the turning point of the year, the lowest point of the sun, and then it starts back up. And that's the rediscovery of higher self and reconnection with spirit. I believe that this story has all that in there. And this is a Bible story. I threw this in. I didn't originally have this in the presentation, but that additional article about the white dog ceremony ritual that I think Joyce sent just a couple of days ago, she said, or in the article, it said, and there's also this part about guessing dreams. Well, this is a Bible story where there's one brother and he has 12 other brothers. And it's the children of Jacob, or the children of whose name is changed to Israel, the 12 brothers. One of the youngest brothers here, Joseph, is always interpreting dreams. And his brothers do not like it because he's always saying, oh yeah, in this dream I saw 12 sheaves of wheat bowing down to me. Or I saw, and my mother and my father represent the sun and the moon. They were bowing down to me too. And all the brothers are like, wait a minute, 12 sheaves of wheat, that's us. So us and our mother and father are all going to bow down to you. What are you talking about? You're insane. You're arrogant. You're a spoiled little, and the brothers in this story, if you know the story, decide, you know what? I think I want to kill him. That's what they start conspiring to kill their brother. I think I have a little bubble that pops up here. Here's a painting from the late 1800s. This is one of the brothers. I added this in. I think I'm going to kill that kid. I think I'm going to kill him. And that's what happens in the story. They decide we're going to kill him. And one of the other brothers says, well, let's not kill him. Let's stuff him down in a well and pretend like we killed him and tell our dad that we killed him. But notice in this painting, there's a painting by James Tissot. Do you see the brothers are having lunch and Joseph shows up to tell them, hey, dad wants to know how you're doing. I'm here to check on you and go back and tell him if you're doing a good job. And they're like, that kid, Joseph, I am just about done with him. But look, they're having their lunch. They're cooking their lunch. Do you see anything interesting about the painting? They're cooking their lunch. What's rising up over there? Some smoke in the painting. Does that look like anything in the sky? Could that be? I mean, that can't be. This painter couldn't possibly know that this story is based on the stars, could he? Like, there's the Milky Way right there in the painting. Now, remember, Ophiuchus isn't down among the other 12 constellations of the zodiac, right? Ophiuchus is kind of above, but wait. The line of the ecliptic that the sun travels along goes through what on Ophiuchus? The foot. Like the painter has put his foot down along the level of the brothers, but he's kind of up above on a little hill, just like Ophiuchus, I said, is a hill, and he has one finger in the air, or actually, he's doing this gesture. You see Jesus in this gesture all the time too, holding up two fingers and a thumb. So this is Ophiuchus and the 12 constellations of the zodiac in a painting about the story of Joseph, who guesses dreams, and Joseph is the 13th who gets what? Not killed by his brothers, although they wanted to kill him. No, we're just going to stuff him down in a hole. And remember what I said, I think these stories are often about, wake up, you have a higher self. But for whatever reason, you felt betrayed by that higher self, or that you had to suppress that higher self because this world is so effed up. You suppressed it. Your father beat you when you tried to show courage. Well, that courage was your higher self, standing up to your father, and you got punished for it. The other parts of you said, hey, we can't have that higher self around getting us into trouble, getting us beaten and perhaps killed by our dad. Let's suppress that higher self. We can't trust that higher self. Its courageous impulses are going to get us killed in this messed up world. So you suppress who you really are. That's what this story is showing. It's like this messed up story, and you're like, what is that? The brothers stuffed him down in a well and sold him into slavery in Egypt? What is that? That's what you did. That's what happened to you. That's your own inner landscape, your own higher self. We disconnect from it without even knowing it. Psychologists tell us, because of trauma, it's a defense mechanism. You suppress your higher self without even knowing it. So the myths are saying, I'm going to show you and wake you up to the fact that this happened to you, but it's not irreversible. You can recover connection with higher self and with spirit. And so that's what I believe these stories are doing. And they use the lower half of the zodiac, and they use that pattern that I showed you. And the reconnection happens along that path of the Milky Way through higher self. And in this case, Joseph, he doesn't seem like a very positive figure, but he's the one who actually ends up saving them all and knows what to do and knows how to interpret the dreams, which I didn't realize that was part of the white dog ceremony too. So let me just show a couple. I'm going probably longer than I should, so I'm going to zip through these. Just look at these. This is a pattern that we see around the world in ancient artwork. That's called, sometimes it's called the master of animals pattern or the mistress of animals pattern, if it's a woman. Here's an ancient, beautiful piece of artwork from Minoan culture, which was like pre-ancient Greece. They think it's from around 1800 BC. And it's this figure holding two geese or something, two ducks, but there's like serpents also coming out of the side of this figure. What figure has like a central body with two serpents on either side holding two geese? Interesting. Let's just go to another one. This is actually from a flint knife. The knife itself is made of flint. The handle is made of some kind of bone. They used to think it was a hippopotamus tooth, but then they realized they did some DNA evidence or whatever and figured it was a bone. The handle is bone. The knife itself, the blade, which is at the bottom, I cut it off just to focus on the handle, is made out of flint, a special kind of flint called chert, a yellowish colored flint. But this flint knife is called the Yebel or Jebel, or sometimes they pronounce it Gebel el Erek knife. It was only found recently, I think. It's from pre-dynastic Egypt, very ancient, 3300 BC. Look at the very top. Again, we have this figure. In this case, he's got a beard, so we can be pretty sure it's a male figure, holding two lions kind of by the throat. So this is that pattern of the master of animals pattern. You see this pattern around the world. I just wanted to show, that. But look down below. There's two dogs crouching below. So that's interesting. You see those dogs there? There's two dogs underneath the lions. Here's another master of animals figure. This one's interesting for a few reasons. It's that the bucket shape. I won't get into that, but this, the handbag or the purse kind of shape pops up around the world, including in the Americas. This one looks like it could be from the Americas, but it's actually from the area of Iran. It's from 2500 BC, again, very ancient, but this time the central figure, first of all, has got like goat feet, but second of all, is holding the animals upside down, like head downward. And on either side of them, if you look closely, you'll see kind of like a scorpion looking thing. On the outside, there's scorpions. So why do I bring that up? Well, and I could find ones from the Americas too, like down in Tiwanaku, there's the famous Gate of the Sun. But just for interest of time, I'm just going to stop with those images there. But there's those two animals with their heads downward this time, and there's scorpions there. So I am going to argue that this master of animals pose has to do with Ophiuchus, with its serpent halves. Remember that first one had like serpents coming right out of its hip area, just like Ophiuchus does. And Ophiuchus can also be seen as a cross shape in the sky. And so the higher self, remember I'm arguing that higher self figures are connected with Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is our connection with spirit. In the New Testament, Jesus is an Ophiuchus figure as well, and he ends up being hung up on a cross. And why am I saying that? Because in one of the articles, the white dog ceremony is described as, well, they hang the dogs head downward from a kind of a cross shape. And there's even this picture from one of the articles that you sent where the dogs are hanging head downward. They get decorated with ribbons. Look again at Ophiuchus. The sides can be seen as all different things, serpents often, but sometimes it's like a burial sheet. Like Jesus is often portrayed like just wearing like a sheet around his waist, or like burial sheet, or even in his baptism scene, he's got like a sash around his waist. So those two things on the sides could also be seen as ribbons, and you could probably see why. But notice this could be a cross, and I just showed that sometimes the animals are hanging upside down in the Master of Animals. I believe that this ceremony somehow may connect with Ophiuchus, which is our connection to higher self constellation often in the ancient myths, and is right next to the Milky Way, the smoke that's rising up. Look at the smoke from the fire in the picture. It's like Joseph was on the side of the smoke, that Ophiuchus is on the side of the Milky Way. The cross in this picture is on the side of the smoke. It's like, do these artists like know it, or like, what's going on here? It's really interesting. And if you look at some of the actual words in those articles, it says the two dogs are hung. I can't see all of it because of the way my screen is, from a rude wooden cross, and they have been strangled so that not a hair of their smooth white bodies is ruffled. That's from the Dallas Morning News article that Trina, I think you sent, dated from 1897. Here's another one from ancient Persia around 550 BC. I put this one in. It's the same pattern. This helps my argument that this has to do with Ophiuchus, because look up above the head of that central figure, the god who's holding the animals by the forelock, holding them by the forelock. Up above, there's this winged disc. Well, up above Ophiuchus is the constellation Hercules, which is this powerful godlike figure. Remember, in the white dog ceremony, it's this the one who rules the heavens. That constellation that's above Ophiuchus, Hercules, is often the god who rules the heavens, whether it's Zeus or Chak or Indra or the god of the Bible, can be portrayed as a spinning disc. And I've shown lots of evidence in some of my books that this disc figure, the winged disc, is associated with Hercules in its spinning central disc form right above Ophiuchus, right above Ophiuchus. Here's again Ophiuchus. That could be seen as a cross. That could be seen as someone holding two animals, sometimes hanging head downward. There's the Milky Way. Sorry, that's not the Milky Way. That's the path of the zodiac. That's the ecliptic path. This is the intersection between the ecliptic path and the spirit path of the Milky Way. Ophiuchus is our intersection and connection to the higher realms and the divine realms. Sagittarius down there, we'll talk about in a second. There's this brightest part of the Milky Way. I'm moving ahead as quickly as I can to finish up here. Here's Hercules right above Ophiuchus, sometimes envisioned as a spinning disc. So the other thing from the white dog ceremony that I think, Trina, you mentioned last time, is you often will have two men from the community, I think, will light the fire or burn the tobacco, one starting from the bottom and one starting from the top. I don't know if this is connected to that or not, but Sagittarius is often like a priestly figure, like the praying hands we talked about a little bit last time, right next to Ophiuchus. And then there's Hercules starting from the top. But also, just as I finish up, this can also be seen as relating to the story of the two children who are down-fended in the story that we're going to hear from Trina. Fended means like defended or protected, to fend off an attacker. So down-fended means like down protected, protected with down, like put in almost like a nest of bird down to be protected. And so it seems to me like Sagittarius is almost in the downy soft part of the Milky Way. And Ophiuchus, connecting to the higher self and connecting to the spinning disc of Hercules, which is sometimes seen as a tree. Ophiuchus, look at how Ophiuchus could look like a coffin or a casket, just in its shape, but with like ribbons on either side. And so I'm throwing in a whole lot of stuff here without, just in the interest of time, I'm going to finish up. But in the story of Moses, when he's put down in the river in an ark to protect him. It's down among the cattails and the reeds and the bulrushes. It says that right in the Bible. And in our story, the creation story, they talk about the reeds and the down. And so I'm switching a little bit from the white dog to, and we can talk about this more later in future weeks because I want to give Trina time to read the story. But this is the same part of the sky where the white dog ceremony is, as where I think a lot of what we're going to be hearing about in the creation story also is. The ribbons, the reeds of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is like the chest or the ark down among the reeds that baby Moses is put in, or other babies and other myths around the world get put in the water among the reeds. So you can see, I'm just trying to show how Ophiuchus could be connected to ribbons, could be connected to reeds, could be connected to a cross. And so I believe that white dog ceremony is very important, obviously. It's at this important point of the coldest, darkest part of the year, but it's that turning point. It's after we turn, that turning point, we're now starting to reconnect with spirit, and it's not easy. We have to be reminded, and it's like we're in the spin cycle and we're going around and around. We sometimes feel closer to spirit, sometimes feel farther from spirit. And so these cycles, these rituals are connected to the cycles. These myths are connected to the cycles to remind us, to help us to find our path. So I will stop. I think that is what I had prepared to try and answer some of my thoughts about this wonderful topic that I didn't ever know about before, the white dog ceremony, but also to lead in to the creation story. I hope that is helpful and not, I hope I told it in a way that is not too confused and jumbled. Thank you. Thank you for giving me all that time. Well, I went almost an hour.
Well, I think part of it too, David, is like in part of the ceremony is also to mention the basket. So that includes Libra as well.
Yeah.
And it's part of the dream into ceremony. I don't know if you saw that one. Where the first thing that the person replies is a war hammer or like a mallet or something, which
Yes, yeah, that's right. When they're guessing the dreams, just like, see, Joseph guesses his dreams. That's why I brought him in. See, everybody needs to know that Kyle often sees things like that I never saw, and he's an expert in this system already. Or he see like that basket. That's brilliant. I didn't make that connection, and I was even showing. I showed a picture of a Iranian artifact, ancient artifact in the shape of a basket, and I forgot that there's a basket in the ceremony. So,
well, I've learned everything.
Kyle knows this system, secretly knows this whole system. That's really good, really good insight. Really good.
Well done, grasshopper. Next time.
No, you are obviously a master. That was great.
I don't know if what we say in our culture too is a lot now. Like when you're born and when you're passing, that you're closest to the spirit world. And I was thinking about that first birth, and we talked about the Odyssey journey. It's like adulthood, and you're trying to find your way to get further from your spirit. That's and you're kind of get jumbled, trying to figure out your way. Yeah, hard to find that higher self, your spiritual being, the divine self. And then you get back out of it, but it's hard to get out of, right? And you find that again probably when you're older, or it's easier to find, I think. That's not man.
Yeah.
We want to take a break before we start?
Yeah, before you start talking, I made so many connections.
Yeah, and that was a great point that someone just said. Thank you for that.
Winters,
Yeah. Okay.
The ceremonies is to move through the spirit, and it's just anyway, something.
Want to break again? Can you just make me the host again?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I'm doing one for Yuri Howie too, for the record.
Okay.
She's in BC right now.
Holy moly.
She really wanted to.
Where you're Yahweh? Where David? Can you hear me? Can you hear? No, it's private. It's not okay. Okay, so we're gonna get started. So this is the plan. I'm just reading it. Everybody has their drawing papers. Just listen, vibe it, feel it, draw things that really connect with you. That's gonna get you to be able to recall significant parts of the story for yourself. David and Kyle will jump in. You'll stop or write if there's anything that you connect to any of the stars or the constellations. I don't have my glasses on, so if I'm not looking at you, it's because I can't see. I'm just looking at the paper, and so we're just gonna get right into it. So the moment has arrived. Okay, part 1, creation story. Ohondo dinyores yohundizo. Yahweh dawana tadinagere kwe izina garuyadi. Aktaneto oska tkanusoda kwe. Dokarni hadi runda denukwe. Gotni hunu kwe dage. Danu ya unka de agotu. Ne aunda de ne dosa agarladarine. Ganu wakta sera ahonatu se. Ayo le rodida. Signore zigoni gonjo qua. So it says, before the earth was made, there was a large group who they lived there on the other side of the blue, or on the other side of the sky. Near there stood one house. There was a small number who lived there, and they were related. There was a small group, they were small in numbers, and not any of them possessed any type of spiritual knowing or power that would be able for them to help themselves to support one another, to protect them from illnesses or sicknesses or negative energy type of thing. You would think of them as being pitiful because they were so small in number. Ne kika ganuskura di der sesne ya de ga rungwe tanu yagungwe tanu dehnia se yaguvira ya raksaa tanu eksaa. So it said in that house, in that small house there, lived 2 siblings, a man and a woman. And the woman had 2 children, a boy and a girl. This man that was named Zeruges, he had a dream. Says this, what he dreamt, it was such of this impossible, he wasn't possible for him to tell about what this story, to tell of what this is, this issue, that he never heard of such things. He never heard of anything like this that he dreamed of. His dream was of such an amazing nature. And that's all he could think of as he went about trying to figure out what could the meaning of this dream be. It says in those times they believed that someone that was born within a call, that's the onisquero, a call, they're born in the bag or they're covered in this onisquero, the neruites, that someone that was born that way would have the ability to have this spiritual, powerful knowing, maybe like Ophiuchus. Nega di ohua di no tadu signore ogudiatisene. Dono ohadigon derudane. It says in those type they would be downfended ohua di no tadu until they would become, until they until they become from a little girl to the time where she could puberty, give birth, or until he become a young man. Someone was always chosen to watch over these downfended beings. In this special place that was created for them. There it was a special place that was prepared for them. And they would lay a mat made out of corn husk, and it would be wrapped in down onoda, like cattail fluff. And there in that downfended state, peace would come upon them as they grew by themselves, on their own. They were separated from everyone. They were perpetually by themselves. So that nothing or somebody would influence them in a way. And so that they would be able to grab a hold of, or they would be able to become of their spiritual power and knowing. And it was always just during the dark time, when it was dark in the night, when that person that would be the one to take care of them would come, and they would take them by the hand and they would lead them out, holding them by the hand. And it said that the girl and the boy, that they too were downfended. This is how their life was, the boy and the girl. They wrapped in corn husks, but it not literally, it's like the corn husks are all about them. And all the cattail fluff was scattered all about them. And there it would come that they would take hold of their power, their internal spiritual power, and it would be able to like protect them or keep away any of the sickness, or not just physical sickness, but anything that would cause your being to become like that. So at that time, the one, he throws thunder, he had a premonition. He received an omen, but it's like he becomes aware of, he gets a premonition that he's gonna die. So those ones that were around him, they asked him, "What are you talking about? You're gonna die." "Oh no, sir, what's gonna happen?" So he answered, he said, "I'm gonna stop breathing. and my body will become cold. Tano oyo nira ne di de wakstun derunyo, and my bones and my body will become stiff. It's going to harden. Nona ehna yawo de toskeru ege tano ke garaje donzasoto. And when that happens, you amongst me, you will close my eyes, and for sure, you will all begin to cry. Tini hadira di deru donzotuni oni. You will, as many of you, you're all going to start to cry. Nona o wagi heyu, agara di, you're not wadista, oskerun dotserunyo. When I die, you're going to make me an elm bark burial case. Oh yeah, so, and another thing, doga ozenehrege. And if you remember, gatge oskenitara se, if you would think of it, not remember, it's like ozenehrege. If you would think of this, you will be able to talk to me. It can be ne onha enego jodeno at the top of the tallest tree. Etonue enego yozenira ne ajerunda. There at the top of the tip of the tallest tree, there you will place my body. Tonue on again, and there is where I will be laid out. Toner wasagorori yada de gone. Then he spoke to his sister. He told her, "Onani agwegu what geri huayer de what de keshne and they say now I have filled my responsibility and supported them, your children, as best as I could. And now then it is you, you alone, you will have to, you will have to support and take care of the two that are downfended. Tam zed jadatka. Danu ya tam zedinitara. You and I, we won't be able to see each other, you and I, and we will not be able to speak to each other, you and I. Kwa nek nona o wadohet stedinia wonsere on zeske wonaruge. Only when it will happen, what this thing that will happen, you will hear my voice again. Kare o nara de zerujes waharanye. Danu doske di garaje watum santo. Got ni go raksonsera wahonatose. So for sure, Rade zerujes, he died. And truly, it all happened just what he foretold. They all began to cry, and great sadness became of them. Yadeno zaha, ziniagot ni go raksos, wa eri wanundu. Ona the wire, ona gigo tina awne. The sister, she was so sad. She said, "What are we gonna do now that this has happened?" De hano dadu, what tari what's her ago. Agardi o not wadista, until they were rundo cerunya. Tano told journal this in the gonde wara. The downfended male, he responded, he said, "We're going to make an elm bark burial case, and at the top of the tallest trees where we will place it." Told near Yabu with Ayundasa, what Eddie was ceremony. Ne ahuari wayer, it's there, Zini hot nigo rawan, ne yada de gama than what ear. Ona young Donny Zerihewe, ne e danutizeni nuha, adayajate kasi. It says then at that time, that woman, she started to fulfill these arrangements to honor the wishes of her brother, what he had wanted, her sibling. And she said, "Now the day has arrived. It's like, now I'm here. Your uncle and I were separated. And now from now on, yeah, Tom, saya gini tara, and now I will not be able to speak with him again. De hano dadu, go Onondaga ya de ya hara ne rao ya luda. The down-fended male, at the top of the tip of the tallest tree, he placed his body. The woman, she was so astounded and surprised what she was witnessing. Soon the as the down-fended boy descended from the treetops. So Kronistaha, Sahuan Deru na Raunaktage, Tinuega Geru, Ne Onoda, Ne Onora. Then his mother, she took him by the hand and she took him back to his special down-fended protected place where was scattered the cattail and the corn husk. Tinigari was there what nistaha ya de aguya disto di yung datawi tanu luaderi wahniese luaderi washniese ne dehnino dadu wangjerak zawaga luwidahatawiya de tijagunusa de. So it says during that time that the mother was left by herself all alone to carry out all these responsibilities in supporting these two down-fended children all by herself. She was surprised to see this man. He came in her house, and he said, where's your family? What did he was there? She responded, they're not here right now. So there yonder Tirarundo de the Hagadori, ne eti wadon you there or did you walk the jadu. So this man, he said, know it, lady. Tirarundo de, the guardian of the standing tree, he sent me here because there is a feast that is being conducted. Tanu agwego tira dinageren you honor titoyo hadiguato. And everyone that lives about there, they must go there. Doga ya tahawerio dio, tinahoda angari humdago, ya doga derion. Oh niya sere. And if he's not pleased with what will come of all of this, I don't know what's gonna happen. You go there yonder, the asqueni, the yotara se, did you not go on the tayat? And we know that someone among you, you can speak to the one that lies at the top of the tip of the tallest tree. Neze unguri waherase, ne aseti go radog, tini hadi ga or a deeder nono osunewe. And here I leave this issue about you for you to make up your mind amongst you. Who is gonna go back? Who will go there? Who will arrive there? Ona ze jodasawe ne radinagerenyu ronadanu, because the feast has already started with amongst those that live there. Any questions? No? Keep going. How? She was so like undecided or like, oh, what the heck? Onaga, oh God, the heck am I gonna do? Just teacher not the my brother, he's dead lying at the top of the tallest tree, laying there, and my two children, they're still down-fended. What tardi was Zerago? The man, he responded, Ne yo deri huizu ne dehni no dadu, ahya don't yo dana, zito deri what the jatu ne raruto de. It's a fixed issue. It's gotta be that way. That the two down-fended, someone has to go to where that feast, that rarundo de, the guardian of the standing tree, where Larun is holding this feast, one of them have to go. Zok, he turned and he left. He went back out. Yeah, this guardian was sorto junerungue. They know the dudayundasa wajun sorto. It wasn't long that the man left, and that down-fended female, she began to cry. Otnistaha, waunda deri wano, du se, oh no, that is a dunzoni. Oh no, ne uzani gora seruni. The mother, she asked her, what do you want? What is it that's going to make you feel better? What's going to fix up your mind? Gari wes what you santo. Kare ona ya mube wa iru. Oga nu wa des a dunzoni atskanera de zeruches. Did you not agree de tayadarde? She cried for a long time. And then finally the mother asked, maybe you want to go see Zeruges, the one lying at the top of the tree? Told her what God that they did on Suto. At that very moment, her crying stopped. Then the woman said, they got hodano. The heck, I can't take you up there to the top of the tallest tree. The down-fended male, he like cut in, he butted in, he said, Nero stomach, I don't know what ear. He said, I can do it. You can bring her there. The down-fended male, he brought his sister, his sibling, to the place where the coffin lay. During the time that she was standing before the body, she became happy. Everything became skana, and she come down the tree. So then again, he reappeared. He showed up, the man bringing a message. It's just hot squeal. Okay, you it's only you didn't show up at the feast yet. What's up? Oh, season gueda dinna dese what there. Or you don't you dana ne atize what you go raserunya you ne rarudo there. Somebody amongst you has to show up at this feast that Larundo there is hosting. Zok Yagungwe wa eri wanundo. Then the woman, she asked, there anyways, the place you're talking about. So he said again, well, you know, I think it's better if you go and check it out yourself, and then you'll really find out what's happening. And then at that time, you'll be able to talk to the man himself. So what year or the wheel di tona ya? Come on, let's go. Torio didn't. Let's go there. So they both turned and they both left and they went over to that feast. So when they arrived back at the place where stood the house of the guardian of the standing tree, the messenger said, hey, so there you the kaya daho and the yagu when and then you know that do yagu weird, you know. Ne this Zasconix there on the Yodana. All right. I did what you said. No, I did what I had to do. Here she is, the mother of the 2 downfended ones, just as you wished. Ta-da! What Kerry Wayeri did, you know, Hoda, what scary Wahe I said. I fulfilled that which with you have assigned me. So then this man Rarundu day he said, Ona Gwegu, one jot the road again, he was on you there. Go, neck neza, go neck yahneza watch you there. Look, everybody that I sent for, they all gathered here at this feast. Just you, just not your family. They won't get. They won't get. See, see, not this is what they're there. Okay, wait. Sorry, no. They won't get stuck. See, see, not this is what they're there. You go such stuff. And you get one not sorry as there. Or now y'all one in there. To get me gura, at me gura, wait, a get me gurio again. And I believe that someone amongst you, she has the power to interpret my dream for me so that I will have peace, so that my mind will be made good again. The woman asked, so okay, who's been by here then? On their own, Rarundu de what 30 was erago. Then at that time, Rarundu de he responded, Aguegu guardo di guatu, Gahaserine, Asunta necagaraqua, Odisto sua. Over the sua, or Yayokwa sua, on the sua, Gunderio, a way Gundigeno jest, the Nunera di Dakenujes, the Nune chat de again. Everybody's been passed by here. The leading bright light, the nighttime orb, the stars, the trees, the bushes, the green, the wild animals, those that fly, those that run, and all the various waters. What? Nek uska ya de taweno, nene overa. Just one has not come. That is the wind. The wagadonzoni ne unka. Ayunge wanataria zene agwade tansera. Ne Yahweh amza watsaluni hage. And I want somebody to interpret my dream for me so that I will be happy again. Tanuya unka te agogwenyu agurori na hoda gondu neti na hodon wadetsa. And nobody's been able to tell me the meaning of my dream. Ne aoriwa ya the gumzot kawe. And that's the reason they will all go through the ground. Everything will be put through. Ona aundu ne dam kundiena akte. Mune dosa tena dawe ne wahetka. So that ne aundu dam, so that nothing can, how would you say that? Ona aundu ne dam kundiena. For all of it for them to be assisted, for nothing of ill omen or a bad way to become that way. Don't want Danny negonto. Things around here are gonna change. Danu aze sununi and newness, they will make it new. Sokyagunwe wa iro. And the woman, she said, Yatiskari westignore keo ogun It won't be long, and my children, they will be able to interpret your dream. Yoga di segun gotni todionza. It's obvious they're still little children. Rarundo de what Rarundo de he responded, Ska ayu. Gonto. Ska on you gigo over there. Gigo jogweirdo de. What's the Zane Garnu? Danu Yodianerastu Haje. Examine this standing tree. What's like, wait, you're gonna see that all the flowers will bloom in full. And it will all become beautiful. It will all become, it will go along and become good. Negiga yot dizu o watroya de ne omodu yo hawitu dinioster negoto. This mature flower will describe the future of what's going to happen here. The mature flower is going to be the thing to tell what the future is. Your two children, they have the same amount of power. And I know how much, I am aware of how much power they have. Until the flowers will fall, that is the time that until then that the two downfended have to amuse me, to entertain me, to amuse me, to all about me. So you get me go to yet? They will amuse me. Until it will become certain. And the matter will be fulfilled. The matter of my dream will be fulfilled. So what you ne yagungwe. Ono skahdondi, dono o no yung gahewe or huio the on ya de nyon ne only one not sorry neza de sonsera. I'm gonna leave now, and when the time arrives, certainly among them too, someone among they will come and they will interpret your dream. So she turned and then she went back. The ona yum zayuwe wa agotun that ne deni no da do yodi kare. So as she arrived back there, she could hear that the two downfended ones, they were talking to each other. The ona zahaganu sakta wa on de. And as she approached closer to the house, it became more audible, like she could hear better what they were saying. She heard the downfended male telling his sibling that their uncle, who's lying at the top of the tree, that he wants her to go there. So they're the So the young female, she asked him, do you know what he wants? Questions? No. Well, good, they're young, you know. Nexi on Zayanerasta, Doga Rangha on Yahrori. How Itoya Hase, or Sagawaha Senea, de Nozaha. I know what he wants, but it's better if he tells you himself. Come on now, go there, he said to his sibling. Oksak ya eyagane, Danoto ya Ujera, de Dinue Taya Dahar and one ha. So she went right away to in that direction, to the place where he laid the uncle. The ona yaha uwe, the jonot dagoya de, the nue tkarundo terra herene agara, the onat wadista yunyadu, what edit wanundu. Those get got it as a donzoni a second. So When she arrived at the plate at the tip of the top of the tallest tree, the place where lay the elm bark burial case, she asked, is it true you wanted to see me? What zerago doske on datum of tapase. Ona yagahewe ne yori hawana dinia wasere. Danu ease on shot the gwet neo hage. Dina hoda on what did he hits there. He responded, it is true, I must talk to you. The time has arrived that this grand important matter of which is going to happen, and you are going to be the main person, the main one in charge of what is going to happen. What's going to, yeah, I don't know, on what dirty hits the matter that's going to pass. Now I'm going to enlighten you. I'm going to explain. I'm going to put all the matters forth before you, the things that are about to happen. Tonya said, you're going to go to the place where stands where is the standing tree. The place where the man that watches, to the place where the one that watches over the standing tree. His name is Rarundo de. When you get there, say, now I have arrived. Zok, then he's gonna ask you, where'd you come from? Zok, don't what zerago, Tony Jawe, no ditaya dahre, nera genuha, azijonatanoya. Then you're gonna respond, I have come from the place where my uncle lays at the top of the tip of the tallest tree. Zok, then he's gonna ask you, why are you here? Then you're gonna respond to him, I'm here because this is where the feast is happening. Then at that time, he's going to ask you what your name is. You will tell him that you are Yotzi Zizo. You are the mature, blossomed flower. Nothing yet? Oh, okay. Don't you know where I do? Don't know. Me go radogante. See the gari hoyeri ne. Ona giga wadonya de. He's gonna greet you, and then he's gonna explain that the matter has become fulfilled. This wadonya de. This feast has now become fulfilled. Yahrori the ya dosun zotka with hanu yasewe. Tina hoda agerunyu. Tanu tonu edon skanyo. Tina hodonsu. Easy unzeri wayonda. He will tell you that you will go through the ground and you will carry or take with you what is scattered about the ground. There is where it will grow all of the things that you will be responsible for. Zoriwa on daum. Just one more thing I must inform you about, that you must be mindful of yourself about. He's going to show you, and he's going to tell you the place where you will sleep. Ne jojeronto Zi on Skuni. And at that time is going to be the first time you will make mush. On this what the oh what this the mush will splatter all over. Dog gets in all over your body. Dog gets in the The mush will splatter all over your body during the time that you're gonna make the mush.
What did you say that again?
Ostiskuni, Owadisquadungo, The dog on your body, during the time you're gonna make the mush. Suk, yo sagonuge, ne de niase, Ronas danu, Osagon hatne, ne ayeza disco gewanu. Then he's gonna call forth his two pet dogs, and he's going to instruct them for them to wipe the mush off of you. It must be that you will be strong-willed and don't say anything. Then he will talk about himself and about his dream. He's going to say the tree will be uprooted, the tree with the hanging flowers. Danu jageni daru ti josun wagaru de jagenitsko de ya de agosi don't tunyu. Me and my spouse, we're gonna sit at the hole and our feet will be dangling. So oni don't got na neda di dosa tena diru danu dosa tena na sajer ne ahodogo se di desari horu dogani zadeno. And I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna repeat it again. Don't say anything and don't do anything for him to become aware that you're hesitant or that you're doubting anything that's to come. Onagi dundayunsna that teacher not the god de tanuwa rorine ya de no zaha si ona wa tunjo wa iru. So now at that time she turned and she came back down the tree, from the tip of the tree, and she went to tell him, her sibling, that now she's going to be leaving, and she said, I'm going over to the feast where I'm going over to Rarunda this feast. Dunda hardi what zeragune ya de no zaha. Getakwa di zenagerago hegonto. The brother, a sibling, responded, I believe you're no longer going to live here. Well, God, there you are, there. Okay. No questions, nothing? Okay. Tony Kahawi. Okay. I know you're gonna do the hardy what zeragune ya de no zahar. Tahqua. Ti zaginara zane go ahead, Negronto. I believe you're not gonna live here anymore. Tony Gahawi dinigo osque yarda ne osiro the hundi sukwa. Hono the way aguego on yungwe yard again. So at that time, if you would remember me, you would just say Teha de hundi sukwa. Tono de way aguego on yungwe yard again. And there at that time, everything will become right. If ever you need me, just think of me and say, Deha dehunzi sukwa. He shakes the earth. Deha dehunzi sukwa. Tono de we aguego oyuwe again. And at that time, everyone will remember me. Suk Wa'ondandi. Then she left. Quite nothing. Oh,
You want
David,
me, you want me to say some things?
yeah,
Well.
keep going, okay.
I could say some things if you
Okay,
want. I mean, I said so much already, but I really enjoyed listening to this story. But let me just say just a couple of things that people probably already noticed. You know, we started right at the very beginning. There was a house or a cabin all by itself. That tells us, you know, that's very good clue that we might be talking about Ophiuchus area of the sky. And I don't know if I could still share. Can I still share? No, I can't. But I know we don't have much time, but I can show just a couple things. And while you're doing that, this thought, I've had this thought last week and I forgot to say it earlier. Why is a creation story so important? Okay, now I can share too. Creation continues on. This is what, you know, cultures around the world believe, that when you sing the story, you're continuing the creation. Or when you're playing the didgeridoo, which is the Indigenous First Nations of Australia, they have an instrument. Today, it's often called the didgeridoo. In their languages, they have many different names for it, like Iroquois is their main language. But when they're playing, they're not just talking about the creation, they are creating. When they're playing their sacred Iroquois instrument, they're playing creation, they're creating. So when we're doing this creation story, when I'm hearing you saying it in this language, it just makes me smile to hear it, because, and you're saying, then everything will be right. That's what these stories are doing, that we're creating. And then we won't forget the creator, you know, is another part that you just said. And then also dreams. I didn't think of this before, but, you know, in the white dog ceremony, the dream, guessing the dream is so important. And then in the Joseph story, the dream is so important. And then in this story, I didn't notice before how central this theme of the dream is. If Ophiuchus part of the sky has to do with connecting with spirit and self, and if dream themes are always there, then that means something about dreams. They are a connection to spirit, or it's a way we can get messages from our higher self and from spirit. But sometimes it's tricky. you know, you have to try and interpret them. Sometimes in some ancient cultures, like in ancient Greece, some dreams come from the false dreams, and then there's true dreams. So you have to know, well, oh, this one came out of the gate where the false dreams come from. This dream came from the gate where the true dreams come from. But those themes are so important. And since you let me share, let me just quickly show the Ophiuchus area one more time about these children. We don't have too much time to show too much, but remember, here's Ophiuchus. I talked about how the higher self figures are often associated with Ophiuchus, and you said maybe these twins, they might have something to do with, you know, they're born in the caul, with the part of the amniotic sac still on their head. It might have something to do with Ophiuchus, because here's Virgo. Remember, that's our first birth. Virgo looks like she's giving birth. What constellation do you think she might be giving birth to? Often Ophiuchus. So Virgo is the virgin mother. You know, just a quick example from the Bible, Jesus is the son of Mary, the virgin, and he's the one who ends up being on a cross. He's the son of Mary, the virgin. He is a higher self figure. So maybe these twins, one of whom says, I am the flower, have something to do with Ophiuchus has the two sides. I'm not positive, but it is in that the down, I talked about the Moses story. Moses was protected by the cattails, the bulrushes. He was placed in the ark among the bulrushes, and they're protected by the fluff of the cattails. I put this in, I'll talk about that later. Let me just show one other thing about a flower that has to do with Ophiuchus real quick. I know we're almost close to 9 o'clock where you are. This is from ancient India. This is a god named Vishnu. He is dreaming in the ocean. He's dreaming the world into creation in this story. Vishnu. He's sleeping on a serpent with many heads. The serpent's name is Sesha. That's Vishnu. He's sleeping on the serpent Adi Sesha, multiple-headed serpent in the ocean, dreaming the world into existence. So it's a creation type of a figure. What's coming out of his belly button? A flower. Out of his navel is growing a lotus flower. Lotus. See that big pink lotus? It's growing out of his belly button, out of his navel. And then the god Brahma or Brahma is on top of the flower, and his wife Lakshmi is, in this case, rubbing his feet. And this is, he's on top of a serpent with many heads. Okay, we already saw that with a couple of different stories. Vishnu, I've argued, is associated with Ophiuchus. Why does he have a flower coming out of his belly button? Look at Ophiuchus. Can you see a lotus growing out of his belly button anywhere? Oh yeah, there's the serpent, Scorpio. The lotus growing out of his belly button. This is the lotus. He's on the serpent. His wife Lakshmi is over here by his feet, rubbing his feet. She says, I'm the flower. The mother gives birth to the two children. One of the children says, I'm the flower. So it could be possible that she gives birth to the two children who are down-fended, protected by the cattails, might be the two sides of Ophiuchus. And like I said, Ophiuchus could be, it's often a god who dies. That's why I showed in the other slideshow, I had this picture. This is from ancient Egypt. Osiris, when he dies, he's a god who dies. He gets put into a coffin that turns into a tree. Just like in this story, there's the elm tree coffin. And some scholars all say, oh, Osiris, of course, he's Orion. But I've shown some arguments that Osiris is also associated with Ophiuchus put inside the tree, and then Isis comes and gets him back when he's in the tree. And this is what's being shown in this ancient wall art from Abydos or Abydos in Egypt. So I'm throwing out some really fast thoughts. There's lots and lots in there, but it has to do with this part of the sky, has to do with connecting with spirit and with creation and with all these amazing themes that are around the world. The clues around the world can help us. I'm not saying positively this or positively that, but when you have one lodge all by itself, that's often Ophiuchus. And I think that there's some clues that point us in this direction. It has to do with creation and reconnection with spirit.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'll stop talking, give it back to you.
Okay, thanks, David.